What a lovely day!
Flat Earth Debate live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, before I introduce who we are joined by, I've also got a GoFundMe campaign running currently, so if you'd like to support the campaign, wonderful. If you do happen to donate to it, just make sure you set the tip amount to 0, as they do take a chunk anyway, so you just enter your amount and then slide it down to 0. Hopefully someone in the live stream chat will put a link to this as I am plugging it. And if indeed you did not want to support my GoFundMe campaign, but you did want to help in some small way, then please share it. So click on the share button in the campaign, smash it on Twitter, smash it on Facebook. It does make a difference. So massive thanks and appreciation to all of you who have supported the campaign so far. So I'll do that now. Shout out to Rebecca Flowers, Matt, an anonymous donor. Thank you very much indeed for the £50. Also to Michael Seklivosky. Hopefully I've said your name right, given how long you've been contributing to me and my campaigns and my various other endeavours. So thank you very much to all of you for supporting me on GoFundMe. Now we are joined by, press a few buttons, Brian's Logic, Neil, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man Rising, Chocolate Sane, Arwin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Hello.
Hello. Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Hello. Good morning.
Right, we might get to the
Yo,
video that
yo.
we didn't cover yesterday. So yesterday we had 2 Codys, and we covered Cody's lab, and I think today we may cover the other Cody. So if you were hoping or voted for that yesterday, you're going to get your wish, because we're going to cover that today. But in the meantime, is there any evidence of the distance to the sun?
It's over there.
No.
I see it outside.
In case you don't get the link or you didn't understand yesterday's show, Cody's lab was claiming distances to I think it was the nearest star, something like that. It makes no difference. It was all based on Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion and an assumption that Venus is Earth's twin with the same radius that can't be measured at the geometric horizon formerly known as Earth curve. So there you go. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity, what's that?
Which one?
It's that thing that has to be there.
I
or
would
the
be
gas
happy
will
with an
stick to the
observed
ball.
phenomenon.
4 people, maybe 5.
I like-
Arwin, I had
I
first.
like what John said.
Yeah, go on, Arwin.
I said gravity is the thing that has to be there. You don't have to know what it is. You just have to know that it keeps the gas stuck to the ball. That's all.
No, it doesn't do that. It's not a force.
I like
Well,
what John said.
Okay, let's hear what John said. Hold on, 10th, you can go next. Go ahead, John.
At this point, I would be happy with an observed phenomenon.
Right on, exactly, Arwin.
I-
Let's see something happening. You say it holds the gas to a ball. What, in a presupposed sky vacuum we're not experiencing in violation of the second law of thermodynamics? I think not. Let's move on.
John, you want an observed phenomenon? I dropped my helium balloon. There you go. What? That's not
Well,
cool.
if we're talking, sorry,
Yeah, right.
sorry, Chocolate. I thought you were finished. If we're talking about like gravity, as in a broad term, it's not correct. For specific gravity, yes, I could prove that their claims concerning that in an experiment, science experiment, because that's all based around the density of the medium and the density of the objects or substances that's in it. So yes, because that is relative density, yes. I can prove specific gravity
Hold
with
on.
scientific
Get
method.
away with
But
that.
isn't
Everyone
gravity still
stop.
in
Hold
specific
on.
gravity?
Hold on. Blatant bait and switch before our very eyes just because it's from one of our own. So you can't say, yes, I can prove gravity. Yes, I can prove elephants. You can prove elephants. Yeah. Check out all these giraffes, is what Brian's just done. No. If it's all about, I quote, all about the density of the medium, then that's showing densities of mediums as opposed to gravity. What are you babbling about?
I said specific gravity, which is one of the 4 gravities.
Oh, I see. A bit like saying I can show terrestrial refraction. I mean, it's got absolutely nothing to do with light traversing 2 different mediums and everything to do with an R-based 7/6R value in the case of standard refraction. But I'll use that word because it's also got refraction in it. So because this word's got gravity in it, somehow you're going to infer that specific gravity is actually gravity when it's relative density disequilibrium in this instance.
But doesn't it also
Well,
have
yeah.
gravity within the formula?
Oh, and he was conceding. Oh my god. So, go ahead, Brian.
Well, yes, that's exactly what was going to happen. Yeah.
So it's an
Well, if I can do
equivocation.
that with unicorns.
So it's an equivocation then. It's just an equivocation fallacy.
Well, no, because it is called specific gravity. So the word gravity is in there. So it's specific gravity. That's what it is. So, I can prove that in a science experiment.
Oh, no, okay.
But it has nothing to do with a force of attraction between masses, nothing to do with bending spacetime, and nothing to do with quantum gravitation.
No, okay. I don't know why I'm objecting this so much. In the same way as, you can call something else that isn't necessarily the thing it is. Now, I'm not sure if this example is true, but it's the first one that popped into my head. Like wheatgrass. Yeah? Now, it's a mashed together word that means a specific thing that isn't wheat and isn't grass. Now, you might say, well, it's subcategorized as a wheat or it's subcategorized as a grass. Yeah, but it isn't wheat and it isn't grass. It's wheatgrass, right? Well, in that instance, I will accept that if you say, well, no, we actually call that gooples. Those are gooples. And I go, well, okay, you're just giving me a new name for that. But you're saying specifically gooples in this instance is that. Now, I'd ordinarily have no problem, other than the fact that by way of equivocation, gravity is going to mean multiple different things in this scenario, because specific gravity, Einsteinian gravity, Newtonian gravity, mass attracting mass, bending 4th dimensional space-time, relative density disequilibrium, if I can wrap my tongue around it, they're all different things. So when you say gravity attached to it, if it was any other word, I don't care what you call relative density disequilibrium. Frankly, I'd like a better word because it's a bit of a mouthful. But as soon as you say, well, let's call it gravity. And no, because we've already got 2 of them. Well, let's call it specific gravity. Why call it gravity at all? Would be my next question, Brian.
Because they want it.
It's just a
They want it to be gravity. I just looked it up, by the way, and
My next
there is no
question-
gravity
We realised
actually
that-
in any
My
formula.
next,
We realised that Brian actually did have this as a topic prior to you looking it up just now, Arwin. I mean, thank you and all, but go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I understand your position. There's already quantum gravity or quantum gravitation. That's on the way. We have the current bending of space-time, general relativity, and then we have the old and busted force of gravitation, force of attraction between masses. So there's 4 gravities because there's also specific gravity. So yeah, I mean, I'm just saying from a nitpicking point of view, I could prove specific gravity, but the other 3, not a hope.
Oh, I can do
In a
this.
science
Hold on.
experiment.
I can do this. Check this out, right? Since entropy is one of the unicorn horns, I can prove that unicorns have horns.
What you got, Arwin? Do you want to read it out?
Yeah, I stand corrected. There is a G in the formula, although barely. So the gravity divided by the gravity. So there is a little G in there. Because the motion is still because of gravitational acceleration, according to this. But
Yeah, they're
That's
always,
what I thought
that's the thing,
originally.
isn't it? Even without them doing it, though. I mean, thank you for looking it up, and I appreciate what you're saying. But regardless of whether or not it's included, there's still going to be their necessity to weasel in the 9.8 meters per second squared, right? In other words, no matter which way you dice it in this instance, for the benefit of heliocentrism, they're going to have gas go down, go boom, boom. And it don't matter if it's a force that's not a force that you can think of as a force that's bending space-time doing it, or if it's a mass attracting mass taught to kids that is going to be untaught to them when they get to university. So long as we're all under the apprehension that there's a solution for the gas not escaping into space, who cares what we ascribe to it? If it's a real force with a real vector, we'll ascribe that to it. We'll just label it gravity, because then everyone will remember their childhood education, meaning that it holds the gas on Earth.
Nathan, in Master D, I've got 4 pictures of the center of gravity.
Okay, let's have a little look.
Right.
Right at the
But
bottom,
if
right?
I can feed,
Hold on,
if
one
I
second.
can round
One
out
sec.
about the specific gravity before you present that, then I mean, it's just like with the Cavendish to me. It's like they're not real. It's not about gravity, but they put it in there. They have to put it in there, right? Oh yeah, they're just pre-assuming gravity and then weighing the density of Earth that doesn't actually prove gravity. But it's about gravity, right? Everybody knows that proves gravity, even though it doesn't. And so they put it into the specific gravity for the same reason. It's just like, oh, this is gravity, right? No, it's not actually gravity. But they put it in there still. It's like, yeah, but the gravity is the thing that makes things move, though, for somehow.
Okay, I've got your first slide up, 10th. Center of gravity.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see, they can call it anything they want. They use a human being, and they're trying to say the center of gravity of a human being is these points in these images. If you go to the next slide, it actually defines it. The point where all forces acting on the body equals 0. So here they are trying to say, well, John's question was again, John, can you repeat your question about gravity? You remember that one?
Oh yeah, I'd be happy with an observed phenomenon at this point.
Right. So they took something that is not observed, it's not a phenomenon, and then they said, well, it's here where all the forces, the one that we don't observe, would be acting on your body, and it would equal 0 if it was there. And then you got the third slide with NASA showing it on different objects. One looks like a protractor. Then the other 4 are there. It's obvious. They find the center. And then the last slide, center of gravity. So the center of gravity, how about just the center? You still haven't proven gravity.
Well, yeah, but in the same way that if I say that entropy is caused by unicorn horns, right? And because that unicorn horns cause time to move forward, and T is part of the equation for entropy, then therefore unicorns are real. You know, like the G is
Right.
only a local acceleration, which Anthony has already scientifically shown not to be a downward acceleration.
Well, you missed the 4th slide. It shows the line of gravity and it's pointing down. So you got center of gravity, line of gravity, and then we got an egg and helium balloon debunking them both.
I think Brian was just doing his best George Musa impersonation and saying, I can scientifically validate relative density disequilibrium, but you can think of it as though it's gravity. Just put the word specific in front of it and everything's great. And Bob's your uncle.
Right. I think that's the purpose of educating the children with the idea of the force pulling everything down, because then when it's postulated further down the line with an equivocation and relative disequilibrium being the instance in this case, your brain will automatically go to the idea that that's a description of the force that holds everything down on Earth as a sphere, because that's what you were told as a child. Now, as we've said many times before, it's not till you get to the higher educations that it's, oh no, that's not the case. It's most definitely not a force. It's the bending fourth dimensional medium of space-time invented by Einstein.
Yep.
Right, but I've never heard gravity in my life described as a local acceleration. Yeah, it's
Yeah, we're in the weeds now, aren't we,
Well,
Brian? John?
I wonder sometimes though whether Einstein was thrown in there just because they were sick of the inquiries, right, about mass attracting mass, because it does just throw the whole thing in the garbage bin. It really does. It's like, oh, that just draws you into a completely new field outside of physics. So the claim of gravity technically no longer is within physics; it's within math now. And so that way they can just tell everybody to F off. Like, yeah, that's not force. It's math. Just go to the math teacher. Don't bother me with this anymore.
Did someone
Right?
want to say something from Discord? I can just hear wind noise from you guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What's the fundamental difference between Einsteinian and Newtonian gravity?
The fourth dimension. One's Euclidean. Just pop yourself on mute. It's just you're overtaking us with wind noise AI. One's. I know you're asking me to lead you, and I will, and I'll pass back to you. It's just the wind noise. One's Euclidean three-dimensional, and the other's pseudo-Riemannian fourth-dimensional. That's the difference between the two.
Right, but that's not a fundamental difference. The primary fundamental difference is the causal power. Because Einsteinian, right, mechanism for motion requires motion in the first instance to be present already, because it's the movement of things through space-time and the displacement of the space-time as they move through it that causes them to then move. So you already need everything in motion. In Newtonian, two objects placed at a distance from each other, based on virtue of their mass alone, would cause the other to begin moving.
Okay. Okay. Or to
Well,
summarise.
there's actually more than that.
Yeah, but let me just summarise what he's just suggested. He's done a detailed job. I want to summarise it, which is to say that one is the mass attracting mass of Newtonian gravity, and the other is the bending fourth dimensional space-time. His overarching point being that one requires there to be motion at all times for there to be a calculation. The other has the motion caused within the description of the mass attracting the other mass. Not that that happens. Thank you. Go ahead, Brian. Thank you, AI.
Well, the fact that there isn't the accounting for in the Einstein's field equations for more than one mass, that means there is no mass attracting mass, so weight is not part of his general relativity. But there's also, he has C in there, which is the two-way speed of light calculation, which confines everything to that rate. Nothing within general relativity can move faster than that. Whereas in Newtonian, it's an instantaneous action at a distance. And there is that is for me, that is the real defining, well, those 2 points are the two defining points. Because whatever else you would say about motion or about because Einstein is really vague about that. He kind of talks about it's relative and frames of reference and blah blah blah. You know what I mean? It's nonsense where he goes with it. But in the end of the day, there is no weight accounted for because there's no mass attracting mass, and everything is confined to the two-way speed of light calculation. Whereas Newtonian, which isn't really Newtonian, it's mass attracting mass instantaneously at a distance. There is no confinement of rate.
Okay, that was a couple of housekeeping questions. And in case you haven't figured out already, that's why we only have a couple of housekeeping questions now, as opposed to the full shebang out every single one, because we get to about the 55-minute mark and we've only done that. So there we go. That's why. I don't want my GoFundMe campaign. Where's the? Oh, I've lost the tab. Talk about yourselves for a couple of minutes. I've lost my tab for my video that we're going to cover with that Cody guy. Hopefully, I can find it on here somewhere.
Well, as long as these gravitational equations aren't reliant on an R value within them, I'm fine with it. As long as there's not a big fat R to.
Okay, bro. You came to the crux of the issue. When someone says is there any scientific evidence of gravity? There's a denotative sense, which somebody says there's 5 denotation common language, but there's one specific connotation, which you just elucidated. And that is that when you say gravity, what the common hears is the earth is a ball is the cause of gravity. That's what they hear. That's what they see in their mind. That's why globers bring it up. Because, quite frankly, every permutation of gravity works just fine if the earth is flat. A lot of people don't know that mathematically you can work it out and the earth be flat. It's fine. Gravity is neither here nor there. The problem is that they think that spheres floating in space are required for the claim of gravity to function on a local level. Because it's not that things go down, it's that things go inward towards a ball. That's the claim that's attached to gravity.
I see. I hadn't thought about it that way, because that kind of answers the question, not that I was asking it. Why did Vsauce poison the well by asserting that on a flat Earth society, pizza pie, pancake, whatever, that gravity would increase, I think, or something like that, as you reach the outside edges of the pie? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like 2000, I'm going to say 14, that Vsauce did that video.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Now, I can explain that to you very simply. The reason why they use the flat pizza pie in their example to tell you that if you move away from the center, you'd have to be standing diagonal, is because they require that straw man to get you off the fact that they're just giving you one example of a permutation of the structure. There are various other permutations of the substructure of a flat Earth that would result in the same equivalent field lines that we experience as up and down. Okay, there's actually papers written about it by people who believe in a globe that demonstrate mathematically that you can have the same field lines, which is essentially, parallel up and down lines, quote unquote, that work just fine if the Earth is flat. For example, a cylinder Earth, or a inverse pyramid Earth, or an Earth with a large density substructure very far down that results in parallel quote unquote gravity rays, just like they claim the sun does with parallel light rays. So there's many permutations of the Earth being flat that work just fine with whatever math of gravity you want to choose. The problem is that they have a predisposition that spheres floating in space is the cause of gravity. That's their connotation that they want you to believe.
I gotcha. So why are you
Exactly.
saying the mathematics of a concept, or even if it's equivocated with something that it isn't and just called specific gravity, for instance, it doesn't necessarily rely upon the notion of Earth being a sphere in order to postulate, even mathematically? Well, I did not know that. Isn't that interesting?
But we must look at the origins of the claim of gravity. And the origins of the thoughts of gravitation starts actually with Kepler and his analemma. It starts with him, and he was postulating about what forces cause all the planets to move around the sun. And then Newton was very interested in his work, obviously afterwards, because Newton came after Kepler, his time. And Newton, it was Kepler's analemma and Kepler's ideas that Newton, that helped with the story about the apple falling on Newton's head, that brought Newton to some of his speculations. Now, I'm not claiming that Isaac Newton said there was a magic force, because he said he didn't want to be labeled with that. But the point is that,
Any other comments on this?
Wow, I never knew that.
I didn't know that either.
So
Well,
are
we
you
call it
saying?
mind-bending
So are
gravity.
you saying the?
Content.
Yeah,
So
so
are
why
you
don't we
saying
call
the
it
core of the
mind-bending
argument
gravity?
is no longer the apple falling on his head?
Yeah, we could.
no, it's not.
I didn't catch either of that.
Yeah, there's a guy from Discord who wants to get something in. Go ahead, whoever it was.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I said, why don't we just call it mind-bending gravity? Because it's what it does. That's just what it was.
Dude, you're not that far off. I don't have the time to do it right now, but I can actually prove that the cause of all is will. which is a function of the mind.
Now we're,
Touche.
Yeah,
now
Is
we're
that
all
a
intrigued.
natural
I get behind.
phenomenon, though?
Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
I'm saying I would get behind that because gravity, you must first will it in your own mind. You must first believe it in your own mind for it to then warp your view of reality. You know, it warps your view after you've accepted it. And then
Yeah,
you end
but
up making claims. Come on, AI.
That's not a scientific theory, though.
I'm speaking. Yeah, but I'm speaking in regards to the prime mover argument, right? Because remember, I said earlier that the fundamental difference between the two gravities is the first motion, right? So you need motion in the first instance for anything to function. That's the definition of force. It's like which came first, the motion or the force. You need something transcendent to set the first motion, right? Which is the prime mover, which is one of the classical arguments for theism.
Well, in the heliocentric model, the first motion, if you want to call it the first motion, would have been gravitational accretion, which is a force of attraction.
But no, the first motion would have been the Big Bang.
Yep, that's the origin.
That's what I was thinking.
Isn't
the
this the
Big
same
Bang.
thing that's
Yeah,
Go on.
but we're talking
I
about
think-
heliocentrism.
Someone had a question.
The
Wasn't-
motion.
Hold on, Brian. Someone had a question. Go ahead.
AI overload? Isn't that the same sort of conclusion that Dr. John Dee came to in his presentations?
Maybe I'm not aware. I'm only aware of him in regards to his laser experiments.
I think he was doing presentations with Karen B, or at least he started the first set of it, and they were discussing. I'm not sure if it was force or energy, like the origins of it,
Energy.
and his conclusion was that yes, energy, and his conclusion basically was that it's will, it's movement, right?
Yeah, the conclusion was there's got to be an instigator. It's a bit. It's reminiscent of the. Who is it? I can't remember who it was that made the letter. It was Newton himself. In terms of Newton's description of the being some first instigator of the action, when he's decrying gravity being like a self-fulfilling agent. And he's like, there's got to be someone to start the process off, like an external agent that starts it off. And that's kind of a similar conclusion to what John Dee drew at the end of his decrying of energies. And he used examples like waves and various other things to make his examples. It was a great series of videos, but from memory, it wasn't actually narrated at all. So for whatever reason, Karen, I don't want to even speculate why that relationship fell apart, but she stopped doing his narration, and those videos were put out just, as essentially silent videos, which was a bit of a shame. But you obviously, as I did, sat and read through them all. Well, you must have done because you know the context.
Well, she stopped doing it because of the arrogance.
I don't care.
And,
I don't care. Don't care.
I just said I thought you didn't know. I just thought I said
No, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It would be nice for it to have been narrated. That's unless it's a comment regarding that, because it just helps the information. But other than that, in terms of the relationship and why it wasn't narrated for that particular video, I might be wrong. Maybe it was narrated. Let's pretend it was. Anyway, is there anything more on this subject, or AI more specifically? Did you want to expand any further on your point, as it's yours?
But yeah, I mean that's one of the problems that many physicists face when they go down and backwards to the fundamental underpinning of their claims. Is they all have that problem of first motion. It's gotten so bad that the new hotness is to abandon the Big Bang altogether and just assume that the universe, right, is like eternally existent in a post Big Bang state, or the post-inflation universe, or steady state universe, right? So the universe itself is eternal, which has its own philosophical problems, because you still need a way to rationalize an infinite chain of regression for causation. It's like if you have a scientific apparatus that needs precedent causation, right, for motion, and then you just hand wave it away and say, well, the cause for this motion is just a prior motion, a prior motion, a prior motion, ad infinitum into the past, then you end up with a quandary. Well, how does physical things move in the first place at all?
They were always moving to begin with.
Which is
It's
what
the
gravity
infinite regress
is.
fallacy. Yes, indeed.
Correct. And gravity,
Still need a
gravity,
beginning, though,
in
right?
a sense, is
Yeah, yeah.
ultimately
Hold on,
gravity. In
Neil's
a
just
sense,
catching up. Hold on,
ultimately
AI.
just
Yes,
expressed.
yes. You
Go ahead.
ultimately always are going to need the beginning of it. So if you just, as quantum eraser phrase it, kick the can down the road, then you're never achieving that, Neil. Yes, that's correct. Go ahead, AI.
Yeah, it's akin to Richard Dawkins when he was put in a corner about the evidence of intelligent design here on Earth. He said, "Oh, I would agree that things on Earth could be intelligently designed, but only by a race of aliens that themselves evolved, through naturalistic processes on a different planet." It's like, well, dude, what about them? You just kicked it one can down the road, and then when you go to that planet, you find intelligent design. Then you got to go backwards, ad infinitum. But I think the fundamental premise that when you're thinking about gravity is really all the phenomenon that's titled gravity is just things appearing to move in free space when they're unsupported. Like you unsupport something, you restrict it, or you unrestrict it from motion, right? It might go up, it might go down. It might stay in its general location for a while, then go up or down. Like that's the phenomenon we're all dealing with, which does have motion and in some instances does have acceleration. And from that, everything else is interpreted. But that being said, what we all experience is generally up and down. And if everybody everywhere experiences up and down, plumb and level, right, that proves the Earth's flat. It takes another leap to then wrap that flat matrix of plumb and level around a floating space ball that you assume is the cause of gravity. Basically, their claim is, what's the cause of gravity? No matter what they say, ultimately the cause is spheres. So when you hear anything that comes out of their mouth, what they're saying is the cause of gravity is floating space spheres.
Wow.
Cool.
Which is crazy because didn't gravity create these floating space spheres?
That's
So
what I
it's like
thought.
they're so backwards. It's
No,
ridiculous.
they create each other. Gravity creates the space
Oh,
spheres. The
yeah.
space spheres create gravity. Are you finally
Gravity
getting it
creates the
now?
Hold
force
on.
of gravity.
Let me just
Yeah.
hold on.
I've been trying to argue this as
Arwen.
Baldwin forever.
Just I just want to point out to AI what's happening. AI's just laid out the infinite regress fallacy for you, and now you're parroting back. Well, that's an infinite regress fallacy. Yes, that's right, lads. You're picking up what he's putting down. That's good to hear. Well done, AI. Yes, beautifully illustrated.
Has any ever
You know there's a
thought about
problem.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just 1 second.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. Has any ever given thought to Newton's? I know they're put by the wayside now, but Newton's laws of motion and how they relate to the claim of a mass attracting mass.
Well, they weren't right, so we can
Yeah,
go
but how
on this
do they
folly.
relate to the claim of mass attracts mass? If you think about them.
Just let us in on what you're going to, Brian, please. Please.
Well, if we look at these first, if the first one is an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted upon by a force. That's his first one, isn't it? If I'm correct.
God, don't make this painful, Brian. Keep going. Tell us.
Yeah, I'm just
Tell us where you
tell us
where you're going.
I'm trying to get his exact. I'm trying to just using Google here to get his exact 3 laws of motion, and I don't want to start talking about them unless I have them in front of me. That's what it is.
What do you want to say?
Talk
This?
amongst yourselves.
I was going to say, rather than talking amongst ourselves, do you want to keep this under your belt for now, and we'll move on to covering the Cody guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless anybody else has got anything else, I don't want this to be left lingering. If someone else,
I could quickly bring that in. It's the first one is an object at rest, stays at rest until acted upon by an outside force. That's a self-evident concession that the static universe required an external agent to impute motion.
Can I come on the back of that? I've actually brought this up to Globers before. You know, for something to change its state, and if you understand, I guess you guys know what state is. Like let's say the beginning, this singularity, as you call it. There's several problems. Either something intrinsic in itself had to change, or something exterior to itself had to change to cause it to change its state. Right. So if it's intrinsic, that means itself caused itself to expand, which that makes logical no sense, because how can something inanimate choose to do something or to choose to change its state? So that's why I agree with AI. There's that initial will that's exterior, even within their own paradigm, that had to change the state of the singularity.
Just stop
Now,
one second.
The second thing is,
well, before you go on,
what's that?
Well, I don't know if you've intentionally done this, but what you've inadvertently done, maybe, or maybe it's intentional, is detail the ontological primitives, right? So I don't know if you, it's your point, and I don't know if you intentionally took it there. Would you like to detail the ontological primitives, because they are directly what you've just said, basically? So.
Well, either nature brought itself into existence or something else did outside of itself.
Right,
I mean, that's
an
the way I
external
would
force.
phrase it.
Exactly. So we've got either one or
Right.
two choices. Either there's an external force, an external agent to what we experience, or it poofed itself into existence by its own volition. Nature either created itself, or there was an external agent. Those
Well,
are
how
the
could that
And here's
happen?
another. Right. Well, that's part of the question. How could that happen? Now, the second problem, there's another problem with their own paradigm that the people don't stop to think about. They say this is an infinite amount of energy. Okay. First of all, what is energy? It's the ability to do work, right? And it's usually force over distance. Like if you move something over a distance. Well, how can you have energy in their own paradigm if there's no space or time to have energy in? Because you got to have space and time to even have energy. So when you say it's a hot, dense mass of energy, but their own paradigm says space, matter, and time came into being at the Big Bang. So how can you even have energy in the initial singularity? Because there's no space or time to even have that in their own paradigm.
Can I just make one quick summary, which is that in case anybody hasn't picked up on the general theme of how this is going, what we're basically saying, if you're asking yourself this question, why is it that we've gone from a question about scientific validity for gravity to the ontological primitives? That's the beginning of everything, the beginning of the known existence, and the question about how it all began, or the Big Bang. How is it they've gone from one to the other? Well, in case you hadn't picked up on this already, the God of the heliocentric world, the arbiter of existence in its entirety, is gravity. It essentially is the God. It's the creator. It's the thing that created everything. That's essentially what is your origin God. Gravity.
Well, let's talk about that, Nathan. What do you have to have in the heliocentric model to have gravity? What do you got to have?
Well, AI already beautifully covered this, so maybe direct it to him because it was his point.
Well, I would be. He's talking about motion, but there's another key component. It's a mass. You got to have a mass. Without mass, you can't have gravity. But you run into the same problem again.
That's got
no.
Hold on, Paul. That comes with its own problems, though, doesn't it? What's mass?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, no, wait. Before you can go there, to have mass, you got to have space and time again. So how can you? So if gravity created itself, that you mean you had to have mass to begin with, and that's why they do say it's an infinite mass.
Well,
that's why they say that.
Well, no, in pseudo fourth space, no, they've split that up into a cause and effect relationship. So the uneven distribution of the mass, whatever that is, causes the bending of the space and time, and that's gravity. So they've split it up. You're saying it's one that needs the other, but it's not. One causes the other in fourth dimensional space time, aka gravity.
I do agree with Paul. I do agree with Paul, but it would be just as nonsensical for me to say, for you to have sploff, blah, 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 you need space and time.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be necessary to define what sploff, blah, blah, blah is?
Yeah.
It all comes back to...
In other words, maybe what Paul's saying... Sorry, Brian, real quick. Maybe what he's saying is, in order for them to have the concept of gravity, they need the concepts of space and time. There you go.
Yeah, what I was going to say is it all comes back to the first law of thermodynamics. neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed. But what they don't add in there, because it's implicit, if you understand it, is by nature. Nature cannot create or destroy matter nor energy, which means the matter and energy had to have come from a source outside of nature, and so obviously did nature.
There you go.
That's
Again, repeat
end
that,
of all
please,
that.
Brian, because you've just given the summary to the entirety of the discussion, which means we can actually move on. In other words, you've answered the ontological primitives. Do you just want to repeat that? Because people might not... You said it too quickly. People might not realise the significance of what you've just said. Please, can you repeat it?
Okay, I'll go a bit slower. The first law of thermodynamics states that neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed. What they don't add in at the end of that, because it's implicit, if you understand it, is the term by nature, which means that neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed by nature, which means that matter and energy, and also by proxy nature, have to have been created by an external being force.
Or to put it another way, whether you like the terminology or not, therefore there is a God. External creator, external entity beyond, above, supernatural, if you will, above what we experience. Yeah, for there to be something creating us that is beyond us in what we experience as physicality, that's what could be colloquially described as God. So, AKA, there is a God.
Well,
Yes,
let me use,
maybe
you're
Shabbat
on
said
with
it
these
says
Nathan.
that nothing was created by him. Everything was created by him and for him.
Let's not get all preachy and religious.
It debunks the heliocentrism. It
Yeah.
debunks heliocentrism completely.
Exactly. You've debunked the origin story of their answer to the ontological primitives, which, once you get past them kicking the can down the road with an infinite regress fallacy, you get onto them violating the first law of thermodynamics, which is how do they say energy and matter was created? Well, they violate the first law. Well, energy and matter created itself. What, when it can't do that? They're leaving you with only one option in the ontological primitives. It's a true dichotomy. You can only have one outcome. So what does that mean if you cannot have nature creating itself? You have to have the external entity creating it. There is no other option.
Right.
Well, when they
here, let me
now
say,
you see why.
When they go to the
who
eternal
oh,
universe as the way to try to get around it, then they contradict the second law of thermodynamics.
Do you want to expand on that? Boom, boom.
Because
right, so we know that
hold on, AI. Hold on one sec.
Universe...
Hold on. Go ahead, John.
Go ahead.
I wasn't just using it for the pun opportunity when I said, "Can you expand on it?" I did actually mean it.
Oh, okay. Well, what I'm saying is, for an infinite universe, that like they want when you show that it had to have a beginning, or if it had a beginning, it had to have an outside agent acting upon it. Then they'll go to saying that it's always existed in order to try as a get around. But that's opposite of entropy. You know, the entropy is shown that is ever increasing. So there had to be a point of lowest entropy, and that would be the beginning.
Yeah, I don't. That excuse of it's always existed, that doesn't get around the first law of thermodynamics.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Because neither matter nor energy can be created or destroyed by nature. So it can't always exist. It can't have always existed. It had to have been created. Nothing exists.
No, hold on. Let me just rephrase that. Just to rephrase what Brian said, it didn't sit nicely with me. No, ipso facto, we do have matter and energy. It's not something you need to justify after the fact, Brian. No, we do have it, and the question is, where did it come from? And we know it can't create itself, leaving us with only one option.
So how come they ignore this then? I don't understand that. How do heliocentrists ignore everything that's been said just now?
Neil, my friend. Not only have they not ignored it, they've instituted an apparatus on a societal level to confuse everyone about this topic, beginning all the way back in the Catholic Church into all the Jesuit order, in all of these things where they posited these ideas in the first place, to push a synthesis paradigm upon the masses, to confuse them about the first motion, so that they can arrive at a subjective reality that excludes an external agent, where the reality itself is self-caused and an internal loop, where we, the subjects, are the creator while simultaneously being the creation. Okay, Neil, that they didn't disregard it. They did all this on purpose.
Deliberate. Okay.
What does that? Well, there's a further to.
It
Further
must
to
be
all of that.
avoided at all costs.
Well, but further to that, if you have that structure taken away from the glory or whatever you want to describe the external creator as, what can you then empower your common man with? If you've got that idea that we are, as just described by AI, as gods, then certain people are more equal than other people, aren't they? In other words, it's about power. It's about control over your other man. Because some people are more closer to God, whatever. Well, no, not if we are gods. If we are just whizzing around on a tiny little speck of dust in an infinitely expanding universe and inconsequential, then, well, we must have an answer to this, and if we're the ultimate creator of it all, then we're the ultimate gods of it all too, aren't we? And that's what they want. Any more on this, or can we actually cover? I'm just going to do a quick plea to the people who are watching. So there's 100 people watching, which is great, wonderful. Please share the show. We've got about 10 minutes left on the live show normally. If we can get to maybe, I don't know, 120, 125 people watching live, we'll extend out the live show because we've had, although it wasn't all housekeeping, a fairly extensive discussion on gravity today. And I would like to cover the guy from yesterday, Cody's video. So please share the show.
So I can wrap it up.
I would like to say something.
Yeah, I knew that would be the case.
The
so
show,
just before you all go again, I know you all got points that you want to summarise this with. I'm not moving on immediately. I'm saying I'd like to stay live to cover the video we intended to cover today after everyone's summed up, but only if we get to 120, maybe 125 people watching. Anyway, carry on, guys.
Can I get in?
Yeah, go.
Here's the crux. Here's the crux. If there is no God, then you become God, and if you become God, you determine your own reality. But if there is a God, he's the one that determines reality. And so you have to conform yourself to his reality, not you creating your own reality and conforming yourself to that, or making reality conform to you. So it really comes down to that. That's the reason. And I've actually heard atheists say that. They say, if there's no God, then I can do whatever I want. And that's why I don't want to believe in God. Because I can be sexually immoral, I can do whatever I want. Go ahead,
yeah, it's a question of accountability, really.
On a side note, my daughter came up to me the other day and told me that she was a god. I was like, "What do you mean you're a god?" She says, "I'm a Minecraft god. I've learned how to make windows."
Yeah, Windows allow you to see things clearly on the other side. But now that we understand the gravity of the situation of gravity and results to motion, we can move on.
Is that a hint to
what if gravity is the molecules that hold us all together?
No, it's not a force.
How about that?
It doesn't hold things together. It's not a force. Okay. Any more for any more? Who wants to summarize their points from this last 40 minutes?
I just want to say something real quick, please. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody.
Is that Gene or
I like
D-Rose?
what AI. Huh?
Is that Gene?
I like what. Oh, Gene.
Gene. That's D-Rose.
He keeps confusing us because we're both from Texas.
Oh, I'm not.
Is that what it is? Y'all some Texas boys?
No, I'm not no Texas boy. No, but no, I like what AI said, and somebody else, I think Paul said. But now this is what an atheist has said to me. Not all atheists are bad people, malevolent, or crooks or whatever people would assume they are because they don't believe in a deity or they're atheist. And he said that give us more credit that we can be good, selfless people that love and do everything else that a so-called religious person does without having to fear any accountability, like the key word accountability or repercussions or ramifications from a higher power. We hold our own responsibility and know that we're just supposed to love humanity and love one another and treat each other like we're supposed to, like we want to be treated. So I said, yeah, that's cool. I said that's fine and dandy, and I don't generalize like that. But at the end of the day, that is not going to be good enough.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to. Go ahead.
I love this. This is one of my favorite arguments. No one even on this panel is saying that you can't be a good person in this discussion, not by any stretch. The problem is, how do you ground goodness? Like, what is the good? As an atheist, you have nothing to ground it in, nothing other than your own subjective feelings or concerns or whatever. Hitler thought it was fine in his paradigm to exterminate people. That was his moral fabric. If there's no God, how can you say what Hitler did was wrong? How can you determine? You can't. So they have no place to ground it. They have no place to go.
That aspect scares a lot of anti-flat earthers. So many of them, when they're an insignificant speck of dust existing only on a tiny dot in a vacuum, there's no real consequences to the things they do and mentally put in a closet. Well, the moment you're faced with the, in their case, awful truth that there may be some consequences, there may be someone effectively, to put it more dramatically, watching over you, so to speak. Yeah, that has implications that make you suddenly assess those skeletons. And more often than not, the skeletons in the closet are particularly terrifying. Now, I'm saying this with a smile because it's something I had to do, admittedly before Flat Earth, face your own demons, air your closet out of the skeletons and all that sort of stuff. I did it along with my wife, before I got married, and, sharing that with the one you love and all that sort of stuff. But the point is you face the things that are bad about yourself, and you kind of have to deal with them and accept them rather than lock them away in a closet. Now, that's much easier to do if the world's a tiny little dot and it doesn't really matter. But it makes a massive difference if you realise the implications of the ontological primitives. Suddenly you've got to assess these things in a very different way that you may have not even considered doing. It's inconsequential until that point.
Well, let me go a little bit deeper in this, Nathan, if you don't mind. If there's no purpose in existence, which means we're just a random speck of dust hurling through the universe, and we're here for an instant and then gone with no purpose. The purpose, in a sense, is the standard for which morality is based, and it governs how you act and also how you act. Well, how you are in yourself, but also how you treat others. For example, I always use a tool, just a tool, like a person makes a tool like a screwdriver. I use a screwdriver as an example. Screwdriver is designed, its purpose is to turn a screw. Can it be used as a chisel, like a flathead screwdriver? Yes. But what you end up doing when you do that, when you go outside of its intended purpose, you actually break the tool and also can damage the thing you're trying to work on. Purpose determines how you react in the world. Now, the next question is, I'm going to stick to I don't want to go too religious, but I want to say this as a Christian. My purpose, if you go back to the very beginning, it says we are made in his image. Our purpose in life is to be image bearers of God. So that means we need to reflect the nature of God in the world. So that's our purpose. If you don't have that as a purpose in your life, then if you make anything you want as your purpose, like making money, or doing whatever you want to do in that, then you're going to damage yourself and the world around you in the process.
I like that.
I'd like to say a comment.
Yeah, you can have the last word.
AI, are you done? Because I've
111 people. If we can get 100, if we can get 9 more people watching, we'll extend the live show during your little spiel 10th. So make it good.
No pressure.
Okay. Well, you said something that a speck on a blue dot, insignificant heliocentric model. So because of that, then you dovetail to what people think about their lives, and what if there's a creator? Maybe I should go that route. Well, the way I see it is if you're of the atheist version and you're a speck on a speck on a speck and your life is insignificant, then the world leaders like Mao and Stalin and Hitler and the rest of them, and the current situation even now where babies don't have a life unless you want them to, but then they could just dispose of you because they're the one who are your gods. Whereas if you do believe in a creator, then you seek him out. And does he have a redemption plan for you because of the thing called sin that separates man from God, from the Christian point of view, that is? So I would rather have a benevolent creator who knows my sinful state and has a way for me to become holy and have that versus thinking I'm a speck on a speck and a speck, I'm insignificant, and allow mankind who says, evolution, survival of the fittest, I'll just kill them all and design my own world. I don't like these people. So which one should you fear most? If you're going to fear mankind in the evolution, well, guess what? We've already seen what that does, survival of the fittest. But a benevolent God who says, I have a way to redeem you, I think that's more attractive.
If I may, Nathan, I got a pretty...
Zeros.
Breaking up. You're breaking up.
Am I breaking?
Yeah.
Can you hear me better
people
now?
watching. 116 people watching. Got 3 minutes. 3 more people. Might extend this live show. I've got my cameras. I've got my lights ready. Could go either way. Might be like you, Ian.
Can you hear me better now?
Marginally. Go ahead.
Okay. This is a poem that when we were doing, my wife, she's administrator for home health and hospice, but we did this for a ceremony for all the people that transitioned. It's called The Dash. I don't know if anybody heard this, by Linda Ellis. It said, I read of a man who stood to speak at a funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning and to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth, and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time they spent alive on earth, and now only those who love them know what that little time in line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. To be less quick to anger and show appreciation and more love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is being read, with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about you during your time when you lived within the dash? I think that was simple. The children understood it, and like you said, was that 10th man? That in between time is so important. You can live it on the side of grace and of knowing that you have a creator that loves you and provides everything for you, and that as long as you depend on that power, you'll be protected and shielded against those Stalins and all them people. Or you can be that heliocentric person that, believes that you're a speck of dust on a blue marble and don't mean anything to some far distant universal karma or whatever, and allow these people who think they're gods and hate God control you, oppress you, and do away with you under tyrannical, control. So, I mean,
with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Fortunately, if you are amongst the 115 people watching live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you, though, to all of you who did smash this super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. What I will do, though, before I round out this live show, is do a quick plug once again to my GoFundMe campaign, if I can find the damn thing. Where is it? Vanished right at the wrong moment. There it is. Okay, so this is my GoFundMe campaign. Massive shout out to all of you. Let's just see if anybody has actually supported it during the show. If they have, I'll shout you out. But I'll shout out the people who have supported it such far. So, Michael, the anonymous contributor, Matt, and Rebecca, thank you very much indeed for supporting my GoFundMe campaign to replace the amps that power the show. So, if you would like to support the campaign, make sure you do set the tip amount to 0, which is to say, add the amount that you want to contribute, and then slide the slider down to 0. They do take a chunk anyway, so don't need to give them a tip, in my opinion, obviously, unless you really, really want to. But if you can't afford to, or if you didn't want to necessarily contribute financially, then just click on the share button and share the GoFundMe campaign on Facebook or on Twitter. That does actually help, even if you don't necessarily contribute financially. So massive thank you to all of you who have tuned in live once again. Just get my lights back on. And say once again, if you are watching, stay tuned if you're on an after show. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!